Received his undergraduate degree from the University of Mississippi and went on to earn his graduate degree at Tuck's B School at Dartmouth. Bill and I have known each other over 20 years, and we've both been in the investment business for over 35. And he's clearly done better because he has hair and it's not all white. We've also suffered through the highs and lows of being Ole Miss fans. Bill is has been a long time member with his family of Independent Presbyterian Church until he recently became a charter member of Christ Community Reformed Church. He is married to a wonderful lady named Ellen for over 30 years. They have 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter, and Bill has attained the title of granddad not so long ago. So I'm pleased to welcome my friend, Bill Wilson.
I just wish Brandon were here to take my place because I've been dreading this. Looked around the room and he said, I guess everybody here in the room has already gotten up here and spoken and given their testimony. I said, uh-oh, that means I'm going to be a target pretty soon. And sure enough, the next day, I think I saw him at Amen Bible Study the following week, and he asked for my cell number, and I said, well, you better be careful before you ask me to speak. And he said, that's exactly what I had on my mind, but I said, you may not want to give me a podium. And he said, well, I better pray about it then. And I don't know if he couldn't find anyone else or whether the Lord led him to be here or Brandon was unavailable and I was the second choice. So, but anyway, like I said, I dreaded it, but I also look forward to the opportunity to share my faith and talk about Christ. And I think we all need to be ready to stand up and speak, but for whatever reason, I'm kind of frozen chosen. I kind of like to sit in the background and be quiet way too much for my own good. So I think I'll benefit by being up here, even if there's nothing I say today that you benefit from. But I hope we all benefit today. And so I think I'm going to start this story with an illustration I heard. My friend's not here. A guy named Jim Montgomery, some of you may know from here in Memphis. He was preaching at this church that had, I think, 6 members to 10 members, and when my family of 6 would come in, we would have a significant contribution to the audience. Goldman said, "It'd always be long-term greedy," and I thought, well, that's a pretty good way to live your life, because that means you're doing the right thing if you're being long-term greedy rather than short-term greedy. And anyway, so I was thinking about for a while to. I needed to leave because I thought they were going a way that was bad for my clients and bad for me. And at that time, there was another church I attended to that was where I heard an illustration. And so many sermons I hear, and so many of them just go right in one ear and out the other. But I thought this was also interesting. It was down in Pensacola. They're having one of those, a revival movement. I don't know if you ever heard about it. It went on for a long time. It's Pentecostal church down there, and my Baptist friend had told me about it, and I was down at the beach, and I thought, well, I think this would be interesting to go see. So I went to the church, and the sermon was on about an eagle, how it lays builds its nest, and it makes it, like on thorns or rough branches and things such as that. And then it will put increasingly soft stuff like smaller twigs and leaves and then feathers and whatever, and so then it raises the babies. But then it has to move the stuff increasingly out of the nest to force those babies where they will fly. And so I thought, well, otherwise they wouldn't grow up and be where they're supposed to be. And I thought, well, I was not expecting a theologically sound sermon for the Pentecostals because I got my Presbyterian arrogance, but I thought this, I think, is right on target, and I thought it was a good message for me at the time because felt like I was going through the desert. I thought, well, maybe God's preparing me for what He has in mind as far as something else. And I think that's exactly what was happening. But it's hard to see it when you're going through a challenging period that you're being prepared. It just feels like a bad period. And so I said, Lord, I want to leave, but I'm scared to leave. I don't know if y'all remember the movie Jerry Maguire. One of the guys I worked with at Goldman said, I think you're getting ready to leave. And when you do, it's going to be like Jerry Maguire. We will have all pounced on all your clients and you're going to be calling, and all you're going to be hearing is busy signals. And I thought, and I was already nervous, and I thought, well, he knows I'm leaving, and he may be right, because it would be tough to fight everyone. And I thought, well, Lord, you've got to shut every door and open every window, open all these other doors, or I'm not going. And it felt like that's exactly what he did for me. And so Goldman took a crazy policy, said, well, if people don't have $25 million, we want to fire them as accountants. And I thought, well, that's going to mean I got to fire a lot of my accounts, and that's bad for them, and that's bad for me. And so I think I need to leave and set up my own money management company. And so then a friend invited me to come join him in this. And so I said, okay. And I asked him, I said, you're in hell or high water, aren't you? And he said, yes. So I went ahead and left Goldman. They screwed up, and I was very successful as far as transitioning almost all my clients to the new company that just set up called Pope Asset. And so, like a day or two into it, my friend that was partnering with me, for hell or high water, said, I changed my mind. We hadn't had any fight. I told all my clients I'm going in with this guy, and I think, I am going to wring his neck. But then a verse came in my mind and says, if God is with me, who can be against me? And it really gave me the strength to say, okay, I'm going to have to rely on God rather than my friend and or anybody else. And so that this is, I guess, just walking faith. But I was close to pulling out his throat. But anyway, and so I set up the company, eventually called Pope Asset Management. My grandfather was a guy named John Pope. He grew up in Columbus, or actually he was in Starkville, Mississippi. I think there's a Pope Hall at Mississippi State or something like that, but in Montgomery Hall. So he was the Pope's, was part of the Montgomery family on the mother's side. But anyway, went up to Harvard, went up to New York, founded a successful, started out terrible as a bond salesman, got fired at his job, still went to work every day like he was, left my grandmother like he was going to work, and he was just hanging out at the park or interview for jobs or whatever till he found one. He didn't tell her he got fired. But he ended up becoming a stock analyst, was extremely gifted at it, and got a seat on the New York Stock Exchange, the youngest guy to be on there. He saw made a lot of good stock picks. He saw the depression coming. He got out and got his people out. The day of the crash, he was wearing a red coat to scare the bulls. His friend has written up in the book saying, he called him up and said, for God's sakes, take that damn coat off. You've done enough damage already, and hung up the phone on him. So that was about lunchtime. And so anyway, so I thought, well, I think I'd like to emulate his success. And he ended up dying at about 31 or 32 years of age. My mother and my aunt got whooping cough, and they gave him a shot with a bad needle, is what they think happened. And he ended up, in his body defenses, he was working so hard, his body defenses had gotten worn down. So he wasn't able to throw off what would have been a normal disease, is what they're thinking. But anyway, then my grandmother took my mother and aunt, moved back to Columbus, Mississippi, figuring they had a New York Park Avenue apartment with an upstairs and downstairs, maids, butlers, chauffeurs, the whole gig, I think. But she didn't figure that's a good place for little girls. But I thought, well, I want to recreate that. And so that was my plan. When I was at Goldman, I thought, I met a guy named Dwight Miller that we both knew. And, he told me an interesting story, I thought, kind of as an aside, that, he was, as he grew up, I don't know if y'all knew him, he played football at NUS. According to him, he was an all-state football player and had D1 scholarship offers until he hurt his knee. So I'm going to have to ask you later on whether any of that is true or not. But he told me another story that I thought, well, I really don't believe this one. I'm going to check on it. He said when he was, I guess, in elementary school, he just had this incredibly bad feeling about his older brother Carl, that he was at risk and danger. So he went to his mother and he said, you know, Mom, Carl's in trouble. We need to go get him. She said, well, no, he's down at the park playing with Susie. There's nothing wrong. And so, but Dwight said he persisted and said, something's wrong. You got to go get him. So his mother said, okay, get in the station wagon. So he said he and his mom got in the station wagon and they driving to the park. And as they were driving to the park, they saw this beat up old jalopy with this terrible looking scruffy guy driving the opposite direction with the Susie in the front seat and Cottle in the back. And so he said his normal passive mother flipped the station wagon on a U-turn, gunned the car, pulled up to the side of the other car, sideswiped it, ran it into the ditch. And then the other guy, the guy ran out of the car on the passenger side, and eventually they caught him. His name was Tattoo Charlie, and he was a convicted child molester, and he got put in jail. And I thought, this story is just too hard for me to believe as to the coincidence that Dwight would have that bad feeling at that time. And Dwight could stretch a story or make a good story at times. But anyway, so then I talked to Cottle, his older brother, and everybody has their own perspective, just like a car wreck, you know, where everybody might tell it a little bit different. I talked to his mother, and I thought, you know, what's the most amazing thing about this story, I guess, is what happened, the passive mother, the 454 engine being gunned, you know, not even just sideswiping and crashing the car and all this, or the fact that they are so passive about it where nobody's really seeing the miraculous. And what I try to do is when I condemn other people, is I try to put that finger back on me. And I say, well, how often do I fail to see the miraculous as to how God is working in my life? And so that we're Christians, we believe He's in charge of everything. But, you know, when we got pressures coming on us, it is hard to remember that He's in charge. And I thought, if they can miss the miraculous in this thing, then I'm sure I'm missing the miraculous in a lot of things in my life too. And so I thought I would share that. You know, I've married a girl named Ellen Fleming, and been very blessed to have met her. I was about 30, dating a lot. I was somewhere where you're compatible with 1 out of 100 women. And so I'd broken up with a girlfriend, messy breakup, and so I thought, okay, I've got to meet 100 girls so I can find somebody that I could be compatible with. And so you just go out and have a cup of coffee or say hello or anything. But I was up to 66, and so I was doing pretty good, but I was getting worn down. And so I asked 4 friends. I said, guys, I'm dating a lot, but my quality isn't always high. I'd like y'all to let me know if y'all see somebody special. I don't need a date, but if you know somebody special. Well, 3 of the 4 said, this girl's named Ellen Fleming, is special, but she's dating somebody and they're going to break up. And I thought, well, that's pretty amazing that out of 4 random people, 3 of them mentioned the same girl, and that they all think she's going to break up with who she's dating with now. And then my friend Bill said, I've got this lonesome dove party. Come over and meet her. And I said, well, I'll make it. And he says, no, you got to come meet her. That's why I'm having this party, so you can meet her. And I thought, well, that seems strange. So I went over, I met her, but it wasn't any big deal. She was there with her boyfriend. And but he called me up a few weeks later and said, they broke up, now you need to call her. And I thought, well, okay, I'll get around to it. And he says, no, here's her number, you call her tonight. And and looking back, he and I were friends, but it wasn't like a brother. You can tell your brother anything, or your best friend, you got to do this, and you got to do it now, and you do it. But he and I, they weren't that close. We didn't have that kind of relationship. But I thought, well, maybe this is another time where God working through someone in a way that just for the miraculous for my own benefit, where I didn't see it. And so I guess one of my messages today is we should all try to appreciate the miraculous. It's oftentimes hard to see. We're living in a physical world, and we've got limited perspectives. And so, but anyway, I'm very thankful for my wife and kids and where God's put me. And so Anyway, that brings me back to, I started Pope Asset Management, wanted to be the second coming of John Pope. First 10 years in my business, I was killing it. And so I started Pope about 2000. Even had Bear Stearns to come see us. So I was a registered investment advisor, but I was also setting up some private equity funds. And Bear Stearns said, look, here's what we want you to do. We'll raise $2 billion for you. We'll leverage it up 10 to 1. So you can have $20 billion at your disposal. We can loan you mortgage backs. And, you can buy mortgage backs from us at 7%. And we'll loan you the money at 4%. So you make a 3% spread. So that's $60 million a year, and you get 20% of it on your hedge fund. And we'll introduce you to everybody that'll give you the money. And I thought, guys, I'm an equity guy. Well, why are y'all coming to me on this? And they said, you've got a good record, and we could leverage that to raise money. And I said, well, how do I short what y'all are doing? And they said, what? I said, this is crazy. You're trying, anybody can do what y'all are wanting to do, and I've been betting against it. And I was right, the financial crisis came, and Bear Stearns went out of business, and I would have left people with a lot of egg on their face. And so I was fortunate to avoid the temptation of trying to do something that I didn't believe in that could have made me a lot of money potentially if things had kept going like they were. And so at that time I was on top of the world. I'm kind of related to the deputy that came a few months ago. I don't remember his name, but he said he went from hero to zero. He was on top of the world. Well, I was a hero then, and then I haven't done a zero, but maybe closer to a 3. As to the this quantitative easing, on the financial markets set me back, where you're having zero or negative interest rates. I'm thinking, how can you have negative interest rates in a world where people are running such large deficits? And these governments are still able to, the more they borrow, the more income they make off of having a negative interest rate. So I've been on the wrong side of the market for a decade, where I had outperformed, and not underperforming every year, but it makes it very difficult because in your money management business, you face a lot of pressure, even on a quarterly basis to outperform. And so I lost some assets, and I've also had some troubled investments. But one of them right now I'm working through, where I'm now CEO of a public oil company in Kazakhstan. It's a Canadian listed company. And and this thing was at the death's door, and only through the grace of God and through a series of miracles, have we been able to have this company recover. And so we hit an oil field that where we hit all 3 zones, which they put the probability of that about 1%, and it looks like a 100 million barrel field. And so we went from not knowing how we were going to pay our debts, where the CFO told me, look, if you've got any self-respect, you'll go ahead and put this company in bankruptcy now, so that the bankruptcy trustee will have a little bit of money to manage the process. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't have any self-respect. I got too much greed. And so, but anyway, it's just a miracle that we hit this. We've had a number of fights, and even Monday, working in Kazakhstan is like the old West. I watch these Westerns when I come home, the Virginian or Death Valley days or Tales of Wells and Fargo, and there's no law, as to what we're used to, or to some extent you have to establish it. And sometimes working in Kazakhstan is that way. So the state prosecutor for the government is trying to cancel our oil license. And not only suing us, suing the Ministry of Energy that gave it to us. And I'm thinking, I'm in a situation where we've got this $1 billion oil field, or we got something that's zero because the government's going to take it away from us and have it canceled. And so Monday we got a favorable ruling on from the court that said that the prosecutor was wrong and that and the ministry were right as to the position we've taken. And so hopefully it won't be appealed, but it's so extreme as to the pressures, I guess, that I've been under as to either we're going to sink or swim as to what we're addressing. And so, I don't know what God's plan is for me. I'm trying to live a faithful life. I kind of related to the sheriff who was up here a few months ago also, who's reading in Psalms. I said, that guy's under pressure just like I am, because I'm pretty well stuck a lot of days reading Psalm 118 and then the first part of Psalm 119. So it's kind of in my book. So I'm not reading all of Psalm 119. I'm not that holy, but I'm saying, in the first part of Psalm 119, I'm reading, that that God blesses those that are faithful, that are following Him, and then and then in the 118, there's a great verse that said, "The nations had me surrounded. In the name of the Lord, I cut them all off." And I thought, well, that's how I feel. That the nations had me surrounded because I'm fighting a number of different issues, and I'm having to rely on the Lord. And I hope all of you guys can rely on it, or I direct you to that passage, because there's times it's very hard to rely on our own strength, or we should rely on our own strength, and rely on Him. And so it's I guess a battle that I continue to fight through, fighting the personal battle of wanting to be Lord of my life, but recognizing that we've got an all-powerful God who can do whatever He wants to do. And so that's one of the things that, even though I fall short, I recognize He is capable, and I've seen signs. I could go through story after story as to where I've seen these miracles on this deal in Kazakhstan or in other situations where, similar to Dwight's story, but at least I think I'm trying to recognize it, that you see the Lord's hand. And so I'd encourage you, whatever issue you have, and it may be like John Pope. It could be his result in your death. You don't know how God is going to use something. My father never would have had enough money to ask out my mother for a date, if John Pope had continued to live and succeed. So you just don't know God's plans. But I'm very concerned, from what I'm seeing from the money management standpoint. I'm very concerned about what I see from Memphis. Seems to me things are not only getting worse, they're getting worse at a faster rate. This quantitative easing that has kicked me on the investment performance. I think it's a way of, I still think it's a way of borrowing from the future. It's going to lead to real problems for our country, and that it's something that, if I'm right, we're going to have problems, major problems, and that it's not just me that will be under pressure. I think a lot of this country will be, and that our faith needs to be not on our portfolio or our financial well-being. It really needs to be focused on the Lord if what I anticipate comes about. So anyway, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself, to worship with you guys on the first Wednesday of the month. This is a blessing for me to get up and speak, and so I want to thank you for the opportunity.
Heavenly Father, I thank you for the testimony of Bill Wells. I thank you for his faith in you. I thank you for the way he walks with you. Father, may this be a lesson to us today. May we look to you instead of our portfolios. May we realize that you're in total control. Father, I thank you for the Lord Jesus Christ, who died for all of us. May you use us today for his glory, because I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.